Longtime 60 Minutes correspondent Bob Simon is dead. He was killed in a car crash in Manhattan last night. He was a highly respected journalist, spent decades covering conflicts, bringing his audience to some of the most dangerous and volatile places on earth. Stephen D'Souza joins me from New York with reaction to Simon's death. So what are people saying, Stephen?
We're hearing from the giants of journalism in the United States, and Anderson Cooper among them, saying that Bob Simon was the best writer in broadcast news at this time. Katie Couric calling him somebody that was a brilliant writer and reporter. And this is echoed by numerous people. Scott Pelley, the lead anchor for CBS News, was tearful last night in announcing it on their newscast last night, saying that Simon was a reporter's reporter. He was the embodiment of what a foreign correspondent was, somebody who would go to the front lines of some of the most dangerous conflicts in the world and really set himself apart once he got there. And Simon told a story about how when they were covering the first Gulf War together, Scott Pelley was just a young correspondent at the time, and he said that they were under attack in the city that they were in, and Scott Pelley's first instinct was to go into the bunker and to take cover. And he said Bob Simon wasn't in the bunker, he was on the roof reporting. He says that was the type of person that he was. Let's hear more from Scott Pelley.
The epic stories of human struggle he liked to tell involved not just injustice and the terrible loss and waste of war, but also great uplifting stories of the human spirit. He loved music. Bob talked about music all of the time, opera, classical music, everything else. And he loved to do those stories about music because it was about the human spirit.
I'm sure there are lots of comments still to come as people digest the news, Stephen, but take me through some of Simon's highlights in his career.
When you look at his resume and you look at his career, it really looks like a listing of the history of the most recent conflicts in the last 40 years, because that's where Bob Simon was over the course of his career. Scott Pelley described Simon as having a intolerance for injustice, and that took him to the front lines of major conflicts. He covered the Vietnam War early on in his career and was on one of the last helicopters out of Saigon before it fell in 1975. He was the chief Middle East correspondent for CBS News, covering that region for 20 years. So being on the front lines there of pretty much every historical moment you can think of. And then he is most well known, though, perhaps for covering the first Gulf War, and he was taken prisoner for 40 days, and an ordeal that really changed him. And after that, he returned, and in 1997, he joined 60 Minutes. And so a lot of people now will more recently know him for his work there. And in fact, the night of the accident last night, he was actually at CBS offices working on his final story, what will be now his final story for CBS 60 Minutes, and that is on Ebola. And a spokesperson for CBS News says that story is still scheduled to air this weekend, and he was working with his daughter on that story. So a fitting final tribute for him will be his final story airing this Sunday.
Thank you, Stephen. Stephen D'Souza in New York.
We're going to pick up an American. All we know about him is that he's at Firebase Andrews and that he's been hit by shrapnel.
Wounded by war on their way home.
President Assad's tough statement warning Israel against military intervention was not taken at face value in Jerusalem.
Consensus seems to be that the communists will break through it